This vestment is a beautiful corpus. The crucifix is not all the way there, but that's easy to do. It's got a few flowers on the ends, but it's not overly embroidered. There's a lot of gold around the corpus here. And that's as it should be, because it has this angel fabric. And the fabric is so busy, you don't want a busy design on it. Now, the customer wants this trim. The fabric I'm working on trying to replicate. And I can take the embroidery off, at least the cross section here, as long as the fabric, this fabric is close to the fabric that I get. I've been working on that, so hopefully that will work. But in the meantime, I want to try and work on this trim. We cannot find another trim like this. I've gotten a few that are close, but not exactly, and he wants this trim. Now there's two sizes. There's an edge trim here, and there's the wide trim. Now this is about 1 inch wide, and this is about 1/2 inch. So what I told him I would try and do is I would try and get a ribbon close to this color and embroider the design on it. I don't know how that's going to work. I've never done that before, but there's a first time for everything. So I'm going to attempt that. And that's what this project is right now. I'm going to try and embroider that. So what I've done is, this is Sulky Sticky Stabilizer. It's kind of like a fabric on one side. It's a tearaway fabric. And on the other side is a piece of paper, plastic. And when you tear this off, it's sticky, it's tacky. This is used for when you want to put it in a hoop and you don't want hoop burns. I have used it with thick velvet, not this one. The one that I prefer is, what's her name? Fabriani's wet and stick. You wet it and then it becomes tacky and you stick things down, and it really does stick to it. And I've used that when I've done high nap velvets that I don't want hoop burned, and I don't want the fabric to distort in any way, because as I say, velvet shifts, and in order to get things to match up right, it's good if you can stabilize it as much as possible. A regular stabilizer just won't do it. Low nap velvet, it's not a problem like that. Now, I've used this one other time when I wanted to do continuous embroidery. There was another class that I went to by the Genome people, and they taught us how to do continuous embroidery. That's what I'm going to try to do. They use this sulky, sticky stuff. And I don't have a whole lot of this, but if it works really well, I've never known sulky stuff to work really well. But in the package you get 2 sheets this size. It's actually 1 whole sheet, but I've cut it in half. And because I figure I can get 4 hoops out of this. Maybe more, because I don't need to do a whole hoop. After I've done the first one, I don't need to do a whole hoop, and I'll explain why. So what I did was I also printed off a template, and in my design I put lines where I want the ribbon to go. So there's going to be 3 rows of 1 inch wide, and then 3 rows of 1/2 inch wide. This is the one. This is the half. And I got a grosgrain ribbon that is close to the color of what I'm looking for. So I did off this template. I really wanted to see what and my snap hoop, again, this is the area, this is pretty much, with only a little bit wider than this, the area that my machine will actually embroider. but the snap hoop is much larger, and so it gives me this nice space on the top and the bottom, and a little bit of space on the side, which is going to come in handy. So what I did was I cut a piece of the sulky sticky, and as large as the hoop, and hooped it. Then I used the template to measure and mark where the design would begin and end. And you score the paper and you tear that off. So the hoop is holding the sulky, but this part, the tacky part, is open. And to that, then I went back to the machine and I just sewed the lines down. I didn't sew any of the other markings down, just the lines. Now, and then I cut off 2 yards of ribbon, and I rolled it up so it'll be out of the way. And then I cut off 3 yards of the narrow ribbon, and because I need a lot more of that. And what I'm going to, I'm lining it up with the black lines that I marked. Line is the edge of the ribbon, or should be. And now this is stuck now. I can pull it up, but it's pretty stuck in place. We'll see how well it's stuck in place when I go to sew it. So now I'm going to put down my 3 rows of narrow, and then I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine. And the first thing the machine is going to do, it has a gold line on both sides. It's going to sew those gold lines. That way it will be really stuck to the sticky. And then it will sew the rest of the colors. And when it's finished, I should have this much of the trim design on 3 pieces. Now, I don't need as much of this as I need of the narrow. So that's why I only measured off 1.5 yards of each of those and 2 yards of each of the others. When I get to the end of that, I'll just be doing these rows in the design instead of the whole group. And after I've sewn it, I'll show you how this works, how you move it and continue sewing from that point on, I hope. Again, I haven't done this in 15 years, longer. It's not 20, more like 15 or 17 years. I haven't done this, and I have never done it on trim like this, this narrow, or this many, trying to get this many pieces. So we'll see if it works. Of course, if it doesn't, this U2 will not show up. Hopefully. All right. I'm not happy with how this turned out. I see lots of problems with it, but I'm going to try and fix those problems. First thing I want to do is I want to measure this. All right. This is, the trim is actually 1 inch. Their trim is 1 inch. This trim, however, is not. This is about 1/8 of an inch less than 1 inch, and that would account for the fact that the design wants to go over the edge here, and it doesn't have the same border on this side that it does on this side. So I'm going to have to go into the design and narrow each of the strips. Narrow them slightly by about 1/8 of an inch. Then they should fit fine that way. The other problems are, of course, that the sticky held it well, but there's so much sewing in here. There's so much this, you can see the ripples in the stabilizers, and it actually pulled out at both ends down here and at the other end down here. And the distortion is such that it goes way over the design. There's almost, I want to say, at least 1/8 of an inch distortion at both ends. that this end has gone way past. The middle, of course, looks fine, but the distortion spreads as it goes towards the ends. I'm going to go into the design and see if I can edit it to cut out the concentration of the stitches. If you look at the opposite side, see the stitches are really concentrated. It's what we call bulletproof. It's so there's, and so instead of using in some of these areas where I used a fill stitch, I think I'm just going to use straight lines to fill in those. The areas are so very small that I don't really need fill stitches. I think lines will just do it. So the next step is to do a lot of editing on this and then try it again. Will I use 6 rows? Not sure. I may even use a different hoop. The problem with I can go to a smaller hoop hoping to hold it better, but I'm not sure that's, I think just simply diminishing the concentration of the stitches will help with this pulling, the distortion. And so I'll do that, fix the alignment again, and see and try a second sewing. But just for the actual design doesn't look bad. The two of them look pretty close next to each other. So I'm going with that. The way you work this with the sticky, if you want continuous sewing, it's already cut itself out at this end and at this end as well. And that's what you do, is you just cut off the ends and you leave the stabilizer in the hoop and slip another piece of sticky in behind it. So for example, this end of it, you would score, this is tear away stabilizer, and it should, but you don't want it to tear away you don't want it to tear away like this. And so and I'll probably go a little bit wider at the top. And once you've released it, now what you do is you take another piece of sticky, and from the back side you stick it, you take all the paper off it and you stick it to what's left here, and then continue from there, putting your things down. They would lay over the edge of this and then stick down to the new sticky. Whether I'm going to do that or not, I don't know, but that's how it works. You would take a new piece of sticky, tear all the paper off of it, put it on behind it, stick it down to what's left here, and continue with your sewing. So I am going to go to the computer now and make changes in the design and then see how that sews off. At this last one here, I stopped sewing after these two, there was no point in continuing doing it since I could see it obviously needed major changes. This one though, however, I sewed parts of it just so that I could get an idea of what the distortion was, what problems we're having. But I wasn't going to sew all of these. The one in the middle would probably look the best. The one on the outside usually ends up looking the worst. The outside ones and the ends, because that's where most of your distortion is.